sometimes things just work out exactly how you want them to. And that's what happened between the Bills and James Cook. They finally agree on an extension. Matt and I break that down. Plus, injuries continue to flurry up across the NFL. All that and more coming up on Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome into another edition of Peacock and Williamson. I am again not Brian Peacock. I'm Kevin Ostreicher filling in for Brian Peacock, but with me is Matt Williamson, former NFL scout. We're here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today, making Peacock and Williamson a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, and in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're 5 days a week here on Peacock and Williamson, giving you daily NFL talk. And thank you out there to all the everydayers, all the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Matt, we talk about James Cook. I guess we manifested a new deal for James Cook. We both thought it'd get done by the time week one rolled around. I'm not sure our timeline was just a couple days later than our conversation, but credit to the Bills, credit to James Cook that they got a deal done, and now everybody can put that in the rearview mirror and focus on football.
Yeah, a lot of stuff getting done this time of year. Sometimes these contracts are a lot of smoke and people get excited about it and fans panic. But deep down, the player and team probably have a pretty good feel that we're close. We're in the same neighborhood. The agents have been talking for some time. These conversations didn't just happen one day ago. These have been probably going on for 6 months or a year, just casual ones. And yeah, we kind of know what we're talking about on this one. Now we nailed it. And there is a little tea leaf there that was, hanging out there when he practiced yesterday. I was kind of like, that's a pretty good indicator that they're friends again,
There are always those little things you can take away.
Yeah,
So the deal for James Cook, just to get some numbers on it quickly here, it's a 4-year, $48 million extension with $30 million of that guaranteed. And Joe Marino over at Locked On Bills does a great job. He gave some other insights on the deal. He said that $12 million per season is exactly the dollar amount that he felt that would be reasonable for him. And he ended up noting that it was 4.3% of the cap at signing. It makes James Cook the 7th highest paid running back in the NFL. And in terms of average salary per year, he also ranks 7th. But that $30 million guaranteed is the 3rd highest of any NFL running back contract. So Matt, you hear 4 for 48, $30 million of that guaranteed. How do you think the Bills made out, and how do you think James Cook made out?
Pretty big guaranteed number is where I'm going with this. Maybe that 4th year, especially for a running back, you get out of the contract. I don't know the exact details of it, but where's a running back going to be in 4 years from now is, risky thinking. So I would imagine there's some out clause that won't hurt them bad. I thought it was a little high, but I think our exact words were, okay, if he's worth $1, I could see them spending $1.10 on him just because of where they are as an organization. They're win now mode. They're one of the best teams in the league. Let's not fight over $1 million or $2 million in an era where the salary cap is going up at a ridiculously high rate and the league is healthier than ever. If that's going to get in our way of a Super Bowl,
Yeah, and that's a big point that you made about the cap going up. And I went through this with multiple players on the Ravens covering Baltimore. For Lamar Jackson, he signed that deal 2 years ago to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, just 2 years later, ranks 10th among all quarterbacks. Right. So you're going to see deals continue to top this one. And again, James Cook is not making top of the market money right now. It's not like he passed Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley in his money, but in his player tier, I guess I'll call it a player tier, he still makes out really good here. Plus the guaranteed money is probably huge. And I think that might be where some of the language was trying to be fought over with Cook's agent and the Bills. We don't know how those negotiations ended up going, but he gets long-term stability, and not just yearly, but money-wise. If something happens, if he gets injured, some catastrophic injury happens, he is protected in that, it feels like. And you're right, Matt, where maybe this is like a 4-year deal, but really it's a 3-year deal. And after 3, the Bills can say, all right, we're just going to take on the couple million dead cap hit and save a lot of money on our salary cap to go out and get somebody else. I don't know how it's going to work, but this is what you do. As Jake Lisco said, Locked On Bengals, you pay $1 million today to save $5 million tomorrow, or you save $1 million today to lose $5 million tomorrow. The Bills took the former, and with the way that they are competing, this is not just a Super Bowl or bust year for them in terms of if they don't win this year, they're done and they're never going to have no, they have a long opportunity with Josh Allen as that quarterback, but they have to surround him with pieces. James Cook has burst onto the scene here. And I also love, Matt, how the running back position for years of it being so undervalued. I mean, Derrick Henry signing with Baltimore, 2 years, $16 million. I'm like, okay, I'll take Derrick Henry at that price point. That's a great number. We're starting to see those contracts bounce back. We know that a lot of those running backs like Saquon, Derrick Henry, a lot of those guys have fought for running backs to get out of that rut. And with these deals, like Kyren Williams has got, like James Cook has now gotten, some of the other top guys, we're starting to see running backs getting paid what they deserve, because I think that their reputation was so far in the gutter for a ton of years, and it was unfair to them.
Yeah, great points there. And one thing I want to go back on that you mentioned was the amount of guarantee. Cook should be very happy, in my opinion, with the guaranteed money he got, just because, and you touched on it, the nature of that position. I mean, it's a not for long type of position. It's a volatile position. It's a hard spot to stay healthy, compared to others. And you take a lot of beating. He's not the biggest guy on the planet. And if he were to have a serious injury, I could see him taking a pretty big step forward or backwards in his career. And you look at the Eagles. I mean, they're Super Bowl champs. They're obviously a model organization, if not the model organization. And they were always so set in their ways. We're not going to pay off the ball linebackers. We're not going to invest in that position. We're not going to invest in safeties. We're not going to invest in running backs, linemen, wide receivers. And they analyzed the market a year ago and say this Saquon Barkley character is on the market, and he's asking for a Gabe Davis contract. Who's going to influence the game more, especially in a day when everyone's playing too high safeties and taking away the big plays. And, if my back can make one guy miss in a light box compared to Joe average replacement level guy, how many yards does that add up to over the course of the year, let alone Saquon's ability to take it to the house, which was uncanny. And, along those lines, the Eagles used a first-round pick on an off-the-ball linebacker this year too, and paid Zach Bond. You got to adapt. If the running backs are undervalued, pay them and get a lot of value out of them.
And that's how it should be. And the position in itself, you're right. There is, I think, a sharper decline than at other positions, especially with guys that,
unless it's Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. And he puts hundreds of thousands of dollars into his body every year. But outside of the anomalies like a Derrick Henry, you tend to see sharper declines. That doesn't mean the day you hit 30 years old, you're done as a running back, right? I think that's a little overblown. But,
and I think it's less now than it used to be. That whole James Conner, Kamara, McCaffrey class that was great. They've kind of faded away slow. They didn't fall off a cliff as much as they used to. And maybe it is because of the investments in their body on a personal nature.
Yeah, I think it's changed just the way that the guys go about it in the offseason, which is huge. And you mentioned kind of the investments. Well, the Bills, they've had a lot of investment this offseason. Obviously, Josh Allen got his huge deal, 6 years, $330. Cook with his 4 for $48. They signed Christian Benford to a 4-year, $76 million deal. Greg Rousseau got 4 for $80. Terrell Bernard, 4 for $50. Khalil Shakir, 4 for $53. They feel confident, Matt, in the core, not just Josh Allen, but the core that they have around him. There are obviously other stars that I didn't mention in there that currently play for Buffalo, but how confident are you in the core that Buffalo has and has invested a lot of money in here?
Less than maybe people would guess. And I really think Allen is a remarkably special player, and certainly we did the quarterback tiers, is knocking on the door, as is Lamar Jackson, to knock off Mahomes. I mean, that's a ridiculously difficult accomplishment. But I
Yep.
think that these two guys, Allen and Lamar, need to start to be looked at as all-time greats. Dan Marino level type dudes. Their playing style's different. So I think he's as big of an elevator as I can remember in the league. He raises all ships. I'll be honest, though, like if you just take the quarterback out, I think the Bills roster is average to above average. Like I could probably come up with 10 or 12 I like more easily, to be very honest with you. And a big thing I say about them and the Packers is, quarterback aside, who is the guy that opposing coordinators on either side of the ball that just stays up at night, can't figure out? Tyreek in his prime, Justin Jefferson, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby. Like, who's the difference maker that just is and one more superhero on the team? Like, they have good rosters, but then I'd love them to have a receiver or a tight end that was a Kelsey level, a Tyreek level, or a defensive player that was Chris Jones level for Mahomes. You know what I mean? The Packers and Bills don't have that.
Yeah, and I think for years it was Stephon Diggs, back when Stephon was in his prime, and that connection worked. Clearly it had its moments as well of drama and whatnot, but Diggs was a clear top wide receiver in the league.
And Allen was younger and not as good then.
Exactly. And they moved away from him. Obviously, they've gone with that kind of by committee approach, Matt, as you said, where it might not be one star player, but multiple good players, solid players. But with that, it feels like they have a lot of that. And look, I think guys like Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, like those guys they're good. I think they're not household names. So people are like, who are these guys? But at the same time, I do think star power is always good. I think the Bills have a lot of really nice depth and really good players, with one, the star at the top of the Christmas tree. Like that is who Josh Allen is. And then you got the ornaments kind of coming down after that. There's not like a second star that you can kind of place right next to Josh right now. They have people who can be that. They have potential guys that can be that way. But when you look at a roster like Kansas City, like Philadelphia, like Baltimore, and you see some of those other stars around those top quarterbacks or good quarterbacks, it starts to make you wonder. And honestly, it kind of makes you appreciate how good Josh Allen is, because he is that elevator, and it makes you really appreciate how valuable he actually is at the end of the day. So the Bills, they get their guy coming up in the second part of the show. They're
super quick. You mentioned Diggs, but they have tried. Like, they invested heavily in Von Miller to say that is our guy, or it doesn't sound like much, but if you draft a tight end in the first round in Kincaid, you look at him like, that should be one of the best tight ends in the league. You know what I mean? Like, give me that guy and they have tried, but it's just hasn't quite come to fruition.
Yeah, you're thinking, man, give me Brock Bowers level production if you're drafting a guy in the first like that, and clearly it hasn't worked out quite that way. So, I thought the Bills had a pretty solid draft this year, especially, getting guys like TJ Sanders and others that I was a fan of. So, the potential's there, but obviously as a Super Bowl hopeful, you can't really wait on development when you're in this window with Josh. And it's the same thing with Lamar and Joe Burrow and all these guys. Like, you have time, but these guys are also now 28, 29 years old instead of 24, 25. So that is kind of the window you're looking at.
And it has both our teams know well, and the Patriots in their prime, and the Chiefs and Seattle under Pete Carroll. You're always picking at the end of the first round. You're never going to be in the top 5. And the Niners kind of lucked into Nick Bosa in a year they were down. These teams never fall that far,
Yeah, they're good at what they do, and they're always competitive, but obviously Super Bowls are the name of the game, and if you don't win it, you're not getting number 1 overall. You're getting 27 or 28, and you're going to be happy with it, and you got to be able to draft in those spots. So injuries still continue to be a big part of the league. We have more to report on, and they just continue to fly in, and it's a super unfortunate thing. So stay tuned. We'll talk about Jordan Love, Shedeur Sanders, and a lot more coming up next on Peacock and Williamson. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. There's 24 hours. FanDuel's giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. And I am going to crown my champ in August. Right now, over on FanDuel, the Ravens are tied for the best odds to win the Super Bowl of the Bills and the Eagles at plus 700. And, despite the fact that I do host Locked On Ravens, I truly think that their roster, the way they've built it, obviously they have the star quarterback, tons of depth, and really a solid path to a championship. Now, you got to play the games, but over on FanDuel, to me, Baltimore is looking mighty good for a Super Bowl pick. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Back here, Peacock and Williamson, Kevin Oestreicher, still here with Matt Williamson talking NFL football. Matt, we dove into the James Cook extension and the Bills in the first part of the show, but injuries just continue to be the name of the game in this training camp preseason period, which again, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. But Jordan Love, this one was the big news, or at least one of the big injury news that we've seen over the course of training camp here. He is undergoing a procedure on a ligament issue in his left thumb that he suffered in Green Bay's preseason opener. Now, the team is hoping that he can return to practice next week, and the Packers expect him to be ready for the regular season opener. Again, finger injuries, thumb injuries, it's a lot different than a foot or a knee or something along those lines, right? But obviously, you talk about the quarterback position. It's interesting kind of maybe what the timeline would be for Jordan Love. If Jordan Love weren't able to shake this or play in week one or kind of miss the first couple games of the season, I'm not saying would derail the Packers season by any stretch. He'll be back. But, he doesn't need practice time now. It's not like he's a rookie, right? He can come in there. He can perform. I think, to me, Jordan Love will be okay. I know I've seen people panicking, man, and I want to try to be this beacon of light to say, Packers fans, I think it's going to be okay. Matt, are you there as well?
Yeah, and you mentioned it's on his left hand. That's obviously better. I mean, chance of him smashing it off a helmet or whatever, or affecting his throwing motion isn't as affected, of course. Now, I do think he's been around the block, that he doesn't need to be out there grinding every snap of preseason or practice. But his receiving core is quite young, including a first-round pick. First time they've done that in a long time. And I think Tucker Kraft's a real breakout candidate, and still have hopes for Reed to bring more to the table. So every rep would, of course, be useful for your starting quarterback. Love is absolutely one of my favorite breakout candidates. Like, I think we talked about this with Sando's quarterback tiers. He was 12 or 13. I think he'll end up at 7-ish. I think he's going to take a one big step forward this year. Not saying he's at Lamar Allen's level, but I think he could be a clear tier 2 guy by this time next year. And I do think it's noteworthy, though, he played through a lot of injuries last year, and they hindered him, and you just don't want that to be a trend for this guy. Now, I also think that LaFleur did a really good job of those couple games when Love was out, when Willis took over. They ran the ball a ton. I know Willis is kind of considered a joke, man, people thought he was going to be a first-round pick, and everyone in that quarterback class stinks. I'm not so sure. I just think he's from a small school, and it's going to take time, and is in a great spot in Green Bay that I think you can win a couple games with Willis at this point. I think his future isn't written yet. So I don't think Packers fans need to get crazy about this,
No, and you're right. Maybe it'll impact handoffs a little bit.
Maybe,
in terms of on the throwing hand, it's good that it is not there. So you make a really good point with the receiving group, though. And that's something the Packers have been trying to figure out. Obviously, Christian Watson has had a really tough time staying healthy. That's been unfortunate for him. They invested the position in the first round, like you said, the first time. Was it 2003? Was that the last time, Matt?
Javon Walker was the last one.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
So while Jordan Love may not need the reps, you make a great point. The receivers, I think, certainly would benefit from it. Now you might have to figure that out in season in the early portion instead of during the later portion of training camp. But Matt, we've also talked a lot about Shedeur Sanders, had a great preseason debut for the Browns. Well, the Browns, they're having some joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can look at the quarterback tracker for how these reps were divvied up. Shedeur Sanders threw 0 passes at practice. And everyone is like, unless Shedeur is injured, there's how are the Browns handling it this way? Dylan Gabriel gets 17 passes. He goes 19, actually. He goes 6 for 19 on the day with 2 touchdowns. Well, it turns out Shedeur Sanders is injured. Adam Schefter reporting that he suffered an oblique injury while throwing during the early portion of practice today and was held out during the rest of the session. Now, at the time we're recording this, Matt, we don't have any other information about how serious or not serious it is. Obliques can be kind of tough. They can be tough depending on how serious they are. The Browns obviously have gone through a litany of injuries at the quarterback position. That's why they had to bring back Tyler Huntley. Dylan Gabriel's dealing with a hamstring. Kenny Pickett's still dealing with his thing. I mean, at some point, I know people are saying start Shedeur week 1. Joe Flacco might just win this thing by default because everybody else is going to be injured at this point.
It's a hard one to comment on. I mean, I understand from a Browns fan's perspective, and I would take the exact same approach. I want Sanders in there as much as possible, preseason, practice reps, maybe even as the season goes on. I mean, if they start out 1-5 or whatever, certainly want to move that way. I've been highly critical of their draft and how they've handled this quarterback position this offseason, and I don't take any of it back. But they also are dealing with a little bit of bad luck here too. Like, I don't know how they divvy out practice reps in Cleveland, even when everybody's healthy. And from what I understand, Flacco really isn't getting much either. And he's kind of projected to be the week 1 starter. And I mean, yes, he was there 2 years ago, but he wasn't there last year. He needs to play, doesn't he? And I don't know. I don't envy the head coach here at all. I think this has a chance to be the worst offense in the league.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Flacco got 13 attempts, so he was second on the team for that week 1 practice. But couple of AFC East injuries that are going on here. Chop Robinson got carted off the field for the Dolphins. Sauce Gardner apparently dealing with some soreness. And I think for me, 2 teams that I think are interesting in the East, Matt, just considering the fact that, we talked about the Bills a ton in the first part of the show. That's the team that is going to win that division, barring a crazy collapse. The Jets are a team that are hoping Justin Fields can help save them. The Dolphins are a team that are really just hoping to not fall off the face of a cliff here as they try to salvage what is left of the Mike McDaniel era, in my opinion. So obviously hopeful that the Chop Robinson is okay. And for Sauce Gardner, I don't know what that is going to entail. It's calf soreness, so calves can be tricky as well when it comes to getting at, especially with the cornerback position, right? Where, you're trying to explode off, keep up with receivers. But I assume you're higher on the Jets, right? It's kind of crazy to say.
Then Miami?
Yeah, I'm curious. Is it kind of is it a toss up?
It's a toss up. I see a lot of holes in the Miami's build, and their corners are terrible. But I also think that offense can be back to humming pretty good too if everybody stays healthy. I'll take Tua over Fields, but I do like the direction the Jets are going. Wanted to comment on these 2 players though. I think you and I brought this up. I know I've talked about it for BP, and I bring it up every time this year. Carted off when someone's carted off the field, it sounds so terrible. But at training camp, like, everyone's carted off the field, folks, because it's far. It's not because that it's a catastrophic injury, but almost every training camp, if someone gets injured and needs to go to the locker room, one of the absolute strengths of this defense, though, for Miami are their edge pass rushers, though. Phillips and Chubb, and I thought Robinson was really impressive. Great first step, great athlete. So I think he's got a really bright future and finished the season in a great nature too. So definitely one of their strengths. And as for Sauce, he never traveled with number 1 receivers. They were a left-right team with DJ Reed, but they just invested in him heavy. They bring over the defensive coordinator that played the most man coverage in the league last year from Detroit. And I think they just gave Sauce a big contract. I think they want him to Revis Island it. I think he's going to be the foundation of the defense. We're following around number 1 receivers. Yeah.
And that kind of is who they drafted him to be.
Yeah.
And I know that he certainly has the pedigree to do that. I know, he's struggled a bit in terms of just being able to stay healthy and produce last season. But at the end of the day, he's still a guy that has all that potential in the world. So, I'm excited to see the Jets are a team. It might just be off of vibes, Matt. We're like the vibes in Miami just seem so bad now.
I know.
And the Jets are like, oh, they bring in Aaron Glenn. Like, he's saying all the right things. They have Justin Fields now. Can he finally reach somewhat of his potential? But yeah, I think now that you talked about it, might be more of a toss up there between those 2. And I think that you despite Garrett Wilson being an incredible player, you're kind of hoping that the rest of that offense falls into place. And, the Breece Hall situation has been weird now for a little while. You don't really know what's going on with him and if the Jets want to invest or not or move on. So, Miami has a lot of talented skill position players with Hill, Waddle, HN. Like, they have a lot of guys that I think can make impacts. And we know that when they're at their best, they can put up points in bunches. So if they can get back to it, that I think will be a good omen for if they can maybe sneak into the wild card round, because I think a lot of people are just very down on Miami in general right now. So
quick note on the Jets too, as I'm very high on their young offensive line.
Yeah.
I think Membo is who I would have taken for the Browns at 3. Like, I mean, I think they're going to have a foundation with 2 tackles. And to your point earlier, vibe-wise, it just seems like the arrow's pointing up in New York and down in Miami,
Yeah. And sometimes that's what it is, whether it's culture, locker room, no drama, it can have an impact on your season, and it can impact on the field play. So that, I think, is more of an underrated thing than some people make it out to be. But a lot of Super Bowl hopefuls this season in the NFL coming up. Matt and I will look over on FanDuel and see what the odds are looking like as we head into the regular season and do some buy or sell on Super Bowl odds for the top contending teams in the league. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Peacock and Williamson. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Peacock and Williamson are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And one of my favorite features, the new Guillotine Leagues, they just dropped, and every week the lowest scoring team is eliminated, and the last one standing wins. Whether you're all in on something new or you like sticking to head-to-head leagues or jumping into public leagues, Yahoo's got you covered. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy shopping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Peacock and Williamson back with you here on this Wednesday. Matt Williamson with me, Kevin Ostreicher, diving into NFL talk. And Matt, there are a lot of Super Bowl hopefuls this season. And, in a league that hasn't seen a ton of parity, really, the Patriots won all the Super Bowls. Then they said, all right, Kansas City, now it's your turn. You go win all the Super Bowls. Like, feels good to have a team like Philly, who even they have won multiple Super Bowls in the past decade. Like, they are a team. Like, a new team wants to get on top there and hoist that Lombardi trophy. But that doesn't mean that the Chiefs and the Eagles of the world are going away whatsoever. And I want to bring up some of the odds that we have over on FanDuel right now about Super Bowl winners and where FanDuel is on them right now. So right now you have a 3-way tie for the favorite. It's plus 700 between Baltimore, Buffalo, and Philadelphia. Plus 700 there, which I think you could make a really good argument for any of those 3 teams to win the Super Bowl. Is there one that sticks out to you a little bit more above the rest, though?
I definitely think the path is easier in the NFC. Like, you don't have, someone's going to have to go to Baltimore, go to Buffalo, go to Kansas City, I mean, something. So I guess I would take the Eagles, not just because they did just win it, but they had a fair amount of roster turnover too. I think just because of the NFC factor, that I hate to tell you this, but I'm kind of leaning on picking the Ravens to win it all. So the Bills would be my third choice probably of the 3. But I also think the Bills are going to be my choice to be the number 1 seed in the AFC because their path and their schedule is not very hard at all.
Yep.
So if they don't have to go to Kansas City, don't have to go to Baltimore, they're hosting. I think these should be the 3 teams. I would not have Kansas City in this tier.
Kansas City is 4.
I'm sure.
They're at plus 850. Is that right around where you would have them right now? 850.
Yeah.
Just a tad below those other 3.
I love what they've done to their offensive line. I mean, I don't love that they've got rid of Thuney, but I think they stole a guy in Simmons. And I think that history shows that if you can at least protect Mahomes a 4 out of 10, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. And this is kind of just one of my tinfoil hat theories, but I bet Mahomes is starting to feel a little bit that Allen and Lamar and Burrow and these guys are starting to nip on his heels. Like, I could see Mahomes going nuclear this year.
He has the core to do it too. I think a lot of people, and we still have to see the whole Rashee Rice thing, what that ends up being for him. But you have Xavier Worthy, who's expected to take a big year 2 leap. Marquise Brown is back. And I think that, he got injured right at the beginning of training camp, right at the beginning of the preseason.
We never see all these guys out there together.
Yeah. And, Kelsey has slowed down a little bit compared to who he was 5 or 6 years ago. We can all acknowledge that, but still one of the best in the game. And you make a good point of they're going to have to rely on guys like Kingsley Suamataia and others to step up there. And I think Tooney is a big loss. But I think and I loved their draft. Like you mentioned Simmons. Yeah. I think he was awesome. They added a bunch of depth pieces as well. I think Jalen Royals maybe could be an impact player for them as a depth wide receiver. So they have, Omar Norman Lott as a defensive lineman next to Chris Jones. Those two could wreak havoc on the inside. I think everybody saw the game against Philly. And this kind of happened when they lost to Tampa as well. And they were just like, wow, that looked so terrible. Is there a time coming to an end? It was abysmal how they looked, especially on the offensive line. They went out there that first year, 5 new starters. They got rid of everybody.
Right. They're not bashful, right? Yeah.
Literally a complete turnover. This year, a lot of turnover as well. And it worked well for them the last time. These guys are still, they're still the top dogs in the conference until they're not. And, I think that Baltimore's roster is better. I think Buffalo's roster, you can argue, is better than Kansas City, who still has a good roster. But that doesn't mean that Kansas City doesn't all of a sudden lose the experience they have. They don't lose the Super Bowls they've won. Baltimore and Buffalo, that's the hill they've been trying to climb. They've been trying to get over the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, and neither of them have been able to do it successfully. Only Joe Burrow has been able to beat Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl in the AFC. So I think that Kansas City is an intriguing team, but it's going to come down, Matt, to me, how they perform in the 1-score games again, because we know they were incredible on that last season.
Yeah.
Even if they lose 2 or 3 more of those games than they did last year and they still play around the same number, that could push them from the 1 seed maybe down to 3 or 4. That's how many games they won like that. So Kansas City's still that top dog for me in the conference, even though I don't think their roster is the best. I think the odds fall where they should. I think Baltimore and Buffalo should be favored over them, but there are still other factors here that I think are important. Speaking of the NFC, though,
Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, these guys have been around the block.
They have so many guys, so many smart guys too. They know exactly what to do in a ton of moments. Detroit lost both their coordinators. They are plus 1,000 at number 5. Then you have Washington, Green Bay, and Los Angeles and San Francisco all at plus 2,000 to round out the top 9 there. Between Washington, Green Bay, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, I'll ask you there because they're the same odds. Is there any team that stands up above the rest? Detroit, the second favorite in the NFC, but is there a team there that you think, hey, I like that team at those odds?
There's one that's the opposite. I would not touch the Commanders. I understand they were Final Four team. I don't think their defense is very good, to be honest with you. I think they're going to have to win a lot of shootouts. Their defensive front, to me, is really a liability. And I love Daniels. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of coordinators, especially all 3 of them in the NFC East, that are doing everything possible to at least slow him down as we speak. It's hard. I keep using the Stroud example on this podcast that you're probably not going to take another big step in year 2. And, I think he'll level out a little, be a great player, have a great career. But they were another team. You mentioned 1-score games. They converted 80% of their 4th downs, and they went for it over and over and over. Are they that much better than the rest of the league on 4th down? Probably not. And this McLaurin thing worries me a little bit. I think they're more like an 8-win team, which is fine. It's a big Football Outsiders thing. We always talk about the plexiglass principle. When a team in the NFL takes a gigantic Mother May I step forward, 9 out of 10 times they take a step back. Because there's a little bit of luck involved, and it's a good thing. But it's hard to go from the second pick in the draft to a Final Four team. You know what I mean?
And it's hard to improve upon that. It's something that you and I have talked about as something that I mention a ton, where the Commanders, and particularly for Jaden Daniels, it's unfair to say the only way that Jaden Daniels can have a successful season this year is if he makes the Super Bowl because they made the NFC Championship game. The Ravens in 2019, they went 14-2. That was Lamar's first MVP season. And everyone's like, okay, well, now Lamar threw 36 touchdowns. Now he has to throw 45, and the Ravens have to go 15-1 and make the AFC. Like, it doesn't work linear like that. There's always volatility. There's always ups. There's always downs. So the Washington has an older roster, right? I think
they're the oldest team in the league.
The older roster thing. I think everybody looks at Jaden Daniels and says, "Oh, they have such a young quarterback. Their roster's so young." No.
And Ertz and Wagner. I mean, they got old men out there. Yeah.
Everybody out there. So I think the Commanders are an intriguing team to me. I think that they can make a run, but you're right. They're going to have to win a lot of shootouts to do it, especially because on the defensive side of the ball, that was kind of the area they needed to improve. And they made moves, but I still think that it might take a couple more years to fully round out the roster as it stands at the moment. But that's all we have today on Peacock.
Yeah, it's fun, man. Mailbag tomorrow, folks. Get some questions. Yeah.
We'll do some Twitter Thursday. So get your questions in. Matt and I will get to them. And of course, you can catch us here wherever you get your podcast, video form, audio form, the whole 9 yards. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the show today. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Peacock and Williamson.